Okay, and we're live. Welcome everyone to the live stream. Today we're going to be talking about the emergence of conversational commerce. And today's session is hosted by MessageBird, Google, and Forrester. So we've got a great lineup today, and I'll just give you a quick run through of what that's going to be. So we have a couple of quick presentations from Vasu and John, and then we're going to jump into a fireside chat to make it a little bit more of an interactive session. So let me introduce our speakers. So Vasu, she's a senior analyst from Forrester, and her research really focuses on winning customer engagement across digital communications. She has 20 years of experience, and I think over the last 10 years or so, she's really focused on the asynchronous piece and the emergence of asynchronous channels and the impact that they're having on customer engagement. We're also thrilled to have John Shirley on. John is from Google. He's an absolute titan in our industry, unparalleled experience across all of the messaging suite of products. And now he's really focused on helping developers really upgrade their mobile experiences across the Google suite of products for messaging. For those that don't know me, I'm Richard, the head of sales here at MessageBird. I've been with the company since the very early days in the garage, so I have lots of experience about how our customers have been using messaging to really drive a better customer engagement with their own customers. And yeah, looking forward to sharing that. As I said, today is an interactive session, and we will be showing you a new channel as well from Google. So as we go through today, please feel free to put any questions that you'd like to pose to the panelists or to myself, and we'll get into that session at the end of the presentations. You'll notice when you scan this QR code, it does take you into Google Maps, and you will then be starting a conversation with MessageBird's Amsterdam office for all intents and purposes. But we'll show you a little bit more about what Google Business Messaging is a little bit later on in the piece. We will show this a little later on as well, so don't worry if you don't miss it at the first bit. So what is conversational commerce? It is a little bit of a buzzword, so I had thought I'd go back and find out where its origins are. It actually comes from a blog post from Chris Messina when he was working at Uber, and he was trying to implement the ability for Uber to make a booking inside someone's conversation. So while someone was having a conversation about, hey, should we meet here? The option to book an Uber. And I think that really was the start of this idea that users have kind of migrated their own interactions into a asynchronous conversation, but businesses have not been able to really make that leap as of yet. But with the emergence of channels, and I think the launch of channels business offerings for asynchronous messaging, that has drastically been changing over the last 5 years. For me, I think conversational commerce has taken a little bit of a different spin. For me, it's about, I think we now do see the emergence of messaging channels in the support type of side of the business or consumer journey, should I say. But for me, conversational commerce is really about bringing it into the earlier stages of a consumer lifecycle. How is it that a user can actually transact and participate with the brand prior to actually making that purchase? And for me, I think let's have a look at it. I think a great way to really explore the landscape of conversational commerce is to compare two different markets. If we think about how digital commerce in the West happens, if you think about a consumer lifecycle journey and then compare that to what we see in markets like China, and it's not just China, we do see where there is a prevalent messaging application who offers a rich ecosystem. This has also made the user experience is also similar. So if you look at markets like Thailand and Japan with Line, with South Korea and KakaoTalk. But let's have a look. So if you're in the West and you're looking to make a purchase, you're probably looking at making a Google search. You might be served some adverts on Instagram. Once you interact with that, you're either taken to some kind of e-commerce store. You might be taken directly to that brand's own website to peruse products, to make your decision, and then ultimately make a purchase. Those purchases, again, are a little bit fragmented into the payments industry. And then if you then want to interact with that company post-purchase, it's using traditional channels, or mainly traditional channels. As I said, we are seeing messaging channels come into that far away, but still the large amount of that engagement exists on channels like email and voice and SMS. If you then compare that to what is happening in China, a user is having a completely different experience. And there's a lot of nuances which cause that. But as a user, I will open my messaging app. I will immediately type into search, hey, I'm looking for a brand to buy shoes. It's going to bring up all the different shoe brands. It'll then allow you to select the actual official messaging accounts for these companies. And then start to transact. And I think one of the great things that WeChat did that really differentiated themselves and put them as the market leader for conversational commerce is that they really enhanced the UI with their mini programs. Mini programs are essentially mini apps that allows a business to kind of strip out micro customer journeys from their mobile apps and insert it into WeChat. So, for example, if I was looking at shoes, they may have a mini program for a specific sale that they're having on shoes that allow me to kind of peruse all the different shoe types. I have a single button to pay, a single click to pay, which I think is a very powerful experience. And then once again, I'm also then using that same platform to go through and engage with that company post-purchase. And that cycle continues. You can then start to remarket that account to that user. You can start to use all the data that you have to make sure that's a very targeted marketing initiative as well. So I think for me, it's kind of polar opposites, but I think the main difference is that we're now starting to see the rest of the market move. Asynchronous messaging is the same UI, or relatively the same UI around the world, but really what starts to differentiate it is what is the functionality that these channels are providing to businesses that allow them to really enrich that consumer experience. And for me, this landscape is rapidly changing. Conversational commerce is really coming to the foray over the last kind of 18 months or so. And then again, with COVID, it's really been injected with steroids to grow at a phenomenal rate. So you have the titans of technology really competing for the space. I think that also shows you their belief in this idea that the users have decided that this is the way that they want to transact and engage with businesses. So you have Google with the launch of suite of products, which John will walk you through in a little bit. The Facebook family of apps, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, all have their own commerce ecosystems at varying levels, I would say, of maturity, but a clear intention to focus on this space in the coming years. And then another great ecosystem in Apple Business Chat. So you have these three titans, and then you also have the more regionalized players who have, I would say, also very strong offerings in conversational commerce, but don't have that ubiquitous option for access across the world. So you have markets where they are particularly strong in particular geos, and therefore they hold a dominant position in those markets. So look, I think the overall message here is conversational commerce is here. It's exciting. There is now a medium for brands to start to engage on this. And it has created a vast wave a vast change, I'd say, in demand for the services. And I think it's a great segue for you, Vasu. She's going to share some of the Forrester research about the demand for this product and how they see it as well. So over to you, Vasu. You're on mute, Vasu.
Sorry. Back here, and I'm just getting my screens up. Thank you, Richard. That was fantastic. And what we are seeing as trends is it's not really just what you're seeing with your platform and the adoption that you've seen at MessageBird. It's largely what's resonating with the industry as well. Something that you spoke about, the digital acceleration during COVID, and super interesting to see that this is an interesting nugget coming through from Salesforce, their connected customer research. 80% business buyers and 65% consumers all telling us that their expectations of what digital capabilities look like from organizations, from brands that they engage with, stands elevated post-COVID. What is this elevation? What are we really talking about? We are talking about the amplification or the increased affinity that we are seeing across the market for messaging and largely for what we're calling conversational interfaces. Now, these interfaces are not new. They've been around since the early 90s. SMS has been around since the early 90s. So it kind of calls to question what changed, what really changed over the pandemic, and why is this suddenly more important? And I think we want to maybe go back and look at three key things that we are seeing at Forrester as the forces that are driving this adoption and this change. The absolute top one there is what we spoke about just now, the consumer behavior, and the amazing affinity that they have for these channels. And there are, I think, there are a couple of reasons for that. Like you said, it's a native channel to any mobile interface. So from a convenience perspective, there is a huge amount of customer affinity to use this technology. The second is the technology itself, just how advanced this has become. A great example of what we're doing with our audience Q&A today. So it's not just boring old text messages anymore. There is a lot of rich media in play. There is a lot of intelligence that's been baked into the channel to make it super engaging for users. And of course, the COVID-related acceleration. So what really happened with COVID, and largely the customer support environment or the customer engagement environment over the pandemic response was the primary channel that every brand relied on, phone, became unavailable for consumers. We all read horror stories of how people were left waiting for hours together trying to connect to brands, travel companies, hospitality companies, etc. And customers, what we are calling at Forrester, resorted to a forced digital adoption of all the other channels that were available just so they could start engaging with the brand. And that developed quite quickly, and those numbers accelerated significantly, well, largely because the technology that supports these conversations on asynchronous channels now, all of those channels that we just saw, are super mature today than where they were maybe about a decade ago. And finally, from a business perspective, asynchronous channels really offer them a certain level of flexibility and elasticity in how they manage customer engagements as businesses, right? So every business out there struggled because of local lockdown and shelter and restrictions across different geographies and resorted to home workers. Asynchronous channels were one of those channels that gave them a super amount of flexibility to just shift their support agents and have them scale up and have customer conversations over asynchronous channels, which is really not possible with a channel like phone because there is such a huge infrastructure dependency if you think about it. So those were some key forces that really made the channel work for customers over the pandemic period, but nothing's changing past the pandemic either. We are seeing at Forrester a continued adoption and growth in volumes for all asynchronous channels, including instant messaging platforms, rich media, and rich chat services, and the likes of Google and Apple Business Chat as well. Then it kind of brings you to the question of what the enterprise narrative of this looks like, the flip side. How are businesses really looking at it? I mean, it is obvious that consumers want to be here, but what are businesses thinking about it? So we did an interesting survey right around the time that the pandemic influence started to get more obvious across the geographies. We got in touch with some global decision makers for technology across different kinds of businesses to ask them two questions, really. What was driving volumes to their support or contact centers today? What kind of channels were they working on at that point in time? And we also wanted to know what their opinion was how that would change over the next 12 months. So what's interesting is that even back then, messaging, chat, both on web and mobile interfaces, and social media were very, very active channels for all of these brands. So they were having customer contacts happen over these channels even before the pandemic. But what's super interesting is that almost all of them, nearly more than 75% of them, increased those volumes across each of those individual channels to go up over the next 12 months. So they realize that this is not slowing down either. And that creates some very interesting dynamics and very interesting changes that we've seen, businesses adopt. Richard spoke about how the channel's largely been leveraged for support or customer support kind of interactions. And, it kind of brings to question, is that all there is for the channel? Or, how flexible is this channel really? Has it scaled really to a point where customers can rely on these channels to have more comprehensive conversations? And that's exactly what we are seeing as emerging use cases for messaging for asynchronous channels. So it's not just one of those push notifications or, here's an update on your account kind of interaction that brands are looking for. Looking to solve with through messaging at all. So we're seeing, what tops the list as the primary use case for the channel is still proactive communication, but with a slightly different objective. So it is definitely an initiative to say, for example, keep your customer informed. But there is also the underlying objective for enterprises today to slightly focus on also being able to then eliminate a contact to, let's say, their support center, or eliminate a branch visit. So it is not just about those simple outbound only, no interaction kind of kind of usage for the channel anymore. It's definitely gone two-way. And there is a lot of focus on leveraging the channel to better understand customer intent and then engage with them on the right channels. And it's not just for simple transactional inquiries either. There is definitely that volume. There is definitely things like, order tracking, or getting a status on a delivery, or scheduling a visit or an appointment, or managing field services. Those are some of the common transactional structured use cases that the channel has already delivered really well on. And those are prevalent use cases today. But what's really emerging as a trend for the channel itself is to kind of start looking at more complex transactions to happen on the channel, and to really leverage messaging as the landing channel of sorts to start customer interactions for any kind of query, simple or complex, and then very intelligently and then use the channel to route the customer to maybe live chat, or use it as an off ramp from IVR, where you want to deflect a customer from a higher cost channel like phone and bring them to a digital space and enable them to do a lot more by themselves. So there is a lot of work that we are seeing around the channel really becoming one of those critical channels for customer engagement, as the first line of defense of sorts, to start engaging with customers across different use cases. And then, kind of figure out where you want to move the customer and bring together that really truly omni-channel experience for customers. And the reason this is really working is because of the really cool advancements that we've seen with all of these third-party messaging applications. The fact that they're so open, the fact that they're so light, and that they are pretty much available on every mobile device, irrespective of the operating system. The fact that it's such an open environment with so many options for customization, for branding, for two-way communications, for rich media communications, secure transactions. The list is just endless for the channel today. So our perspective at Forrester, this is definitely growing. And we are definitely seeing brands invest more and more in being able to bring platforms that definitely include asynchronous channels as a part of their customer engagement strategy.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that, Vasu. And yeah, look, I think it's also a great segue. I think, as you say, the number one is obviously the consumer behavior. But I think what we've really been waiting for is the emergence of the appropriate channel and features within that channel for businesses to really create that meaningful experience. And yeah, it's a great pleasure to also now hand over to John. And I think if we're going to trust anyone to bring out the right features, it's going to be Google. So thanks, John. Over to you.
Hey, Richard. Hey, Vasu. Can you see me okay?
Your video's off.
We're not seeing you yet.
Okay, let me turn my video on. Okay, here I am.
There you are.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me today. It's great to participate in a truly global webinar. I think today we're spanning 8 time zones. And lots of interesting facts coming out around the world from Vasu's presentation there. Let me pull up my presentation. I'm a little bit croaky this morning, so do forgive me and bear with me. I do have a glass of water to help me along. 1 second. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about business messages. I'll briefly introduce myself, and then I'll show you some research and a use case example and where to go to learn more about business messages. So I myself work in Google's Business Connections Partnerships team, and I work across a number of products that we're bringing to partners and brands around the world. Those are some carrier-related products where the users and brands are using telephone numbers to interact, and those are RBM, which stands for Rich Business Messaging, which is part of the RCS protocol, verified SMS, verified calling, and lastly, business messages, which is what I'll be going a little bit more deeply into today. Business messages, it allows connections, communications in Google Search, Maps, Messages, or Dialer. So what problem are we looking to solve? Our time today is split in many, many different ways, and the COVID lockdowns have really brought how much our time is split. I myself, whilst Vasu was talking, was distracted by my dog that wanted to go out, and so I had to leave and let my dog out. I've not heard her coming back yet, so hopefully you won't hear her barking during the conversation, but it does make the point that our time is split. But today, when you need support or service, or you're looking to buy a product quickly, you're often driven to make a phone call, and there's huge investment around the world into contact centers, and users often encounter an IVR system. And if you aggregate all that time, they're spending 43 days of their life on hold, and 97% of users actually don't enjoy using an IVR system. So what can we do to make it better? Well, people are now very familiar with messaging, texting, and ZipWhip did some research, and it showed that 67% of consumers actually prefer texting with a business rather than using email or a phone call. So that's a really important statistic. And when we look at what is native on a phone, in the past, Vasu mentioned that it's been around since the 1990s, and it hasn't changed much. And we're all now very familiar with the kind of frauds and spam that happens on SMS. It's not an ideal channel at all for using texting. And the research shows us that customers actually now value a much more personalized, contextual and interactive communication with businesses, and they want to use messaging for that channel. So we've thought long and hard about it, and we've realized that with so many businesses on Maps and Search, that a useful method for users to interact was at the point of discovery. So something like 75% of users near to your business actually discover you through a search engine. So this was a logical place to put it. So there are now multiple entry points for business messages on Google. First entry point is on search, where you'll start seeing the blue message button appear on brands search results. You'll also see it in maps. You may have already seen it in maps, and also businesses can now use a button on their website as well to take them directly into messaging. And this is available all over the world. And the kind of features that we recommend for different areas. So if you're wanting to delight customers and drive results, Pure 360 showed that 59% of consumers who experience personalization actually it influenced their purchase. So we have features such as rich cards. You can share photos and links between the brands and your customers. You can use product carousels where you can, here you've got an example with some sunglasses, where you can scroll backwards and forwards through the products that are of interest. And we suggest providing assisted messaging. So it's possible to actually give suggested replies, where users can actually select those suggested replies, which enables them to navigate far faster rather than typing. You can, of course, type what you're looking for, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. Reaching customers where they are super important. So as I mentioned, that 75% of people actually discover businesses near them through search, and here 67% of people rather text and businesses about appointments, reminders, and so forth. Some research from ZipWhip. So using smart welcome messages, using order status updates, and scheduling appointments through business messages helps you reach those customers at a timely point where they actually are. Increasing efficiency with digital agents. IBM research showed 80% of routine questions can actually be handled by chatbots, and that's achieved through assistive messaging, smart automation, and suggested actions that allow users to navigate quickly to what it is that they want to do. Also, I think it's important to understand the intent that the user has reached out to you and is starting the conversation and chatting with the business. So actually using tools like Dialogflow to understand the intent, use natural language processing and natural language understanding to guide and the user to satisfy their intent. Provide assistive, intuitive experiences. Walker is a consulting company in the area of customer experience, and they believe that customer experience actually is more important than price as a key differentiator. So again, we suggest assistive messaging, smart chips, product carousels to help achieve that assistive and intuitive experience for users. Here on this example, you've got Woolworths, where they're showing which aisle the user will need to go to find the product that they're looking for within their shopping centres. And you can see here the smart chips such as find another product, store feedback, and store hours, which are commonly search for questions. Forrester, so this is some research from Vasu's organization, and there are some significant savings to be made. I'm not sure about the actual figure, but Forrester believes it's 70 cents per customer interaction. And when you try it yourself, you realize that actually it is super fast, it is super efficient. And we actually believe at Google that the best combination, the optimum combination, is to use bots and live agents together with live agents. So surface information for live agents, give the ability for bots to escalate to live agents so that you don't have these dead ends within the conversation, and that the user is able to start the conversation and follow through the conversation and end the conversation having achieved what it is that they wanted to achieve. I'm conscious of time, so I'll move ahead quickly with these. Give your customers answers. So Forbes, 67% of business leaders believe that actually it increases sales. So the ability to show your product inventory and status is really important to users. Loyalty can increase if you make it very easy for them to find and purchase the products that they're looking for. Making the connection feel personal. So it's important to think about the design of your user interface. Through the features of business messages, you can show your logo, you can use colors, you can use a tone of voice within your responses, and really express the brand emotion that is unique to you. And you can also understand every customer is different, and it's their journey that's important. Understand, and using the tools that Google provide, you can help understand the true value of the customer through all their different interactions with you. And it is far more than what they spend in the shops. Then there's CSAT data. So Zendesk believes that 98% of benchmark data revealed that third-party messaging has CSAT of 98%. This is really important. We've noticed that the response rates of businesses to users' needs is really important to a user's satisfaction. So they're very strongly correlated, and using the appropriate tools, smart welcome messages, smart automation, and assistive, focusing on that assistive messaging is really important to achieve these high CSAT results. Real use case examples. So Dish, Fortune 250 company, they wanted to respond more effectively to customers and implemented business messaging. And Dustin Hayes speaks highly about business messages and the impact that it actually had. And the numbers were actually truly astounding with this use case. They had a 28% decrease in average handling times for the customer's requests. That's really important. 14% increase in customer experience scores. That's the CSAT scores, which is a material uplift. 21% improvement to resolution rate. And this is compared as to web chat. 81% increase in business channel stickiness. By channel stickiness, that means that the customers were happy to use this channel again to come back and talk with Dish. So great results. Really love to hear about what other use cases are happening and what results other brands and businesses are finding, and also how users feel about that. If you want to learn more, we do have a link here, businessmessages.google. Please do go to that link, and also feel free to reach out to me or our partners such as MessageBird. On that note, I'll hand over to.
Awesome. Thank you very much, John. I'll put my screen back up as well so people can see the QR code. We've got a bunch of questions in already. Vasu, you were having a look through. Yeah, what did you see?
Yeah, we're having some questions come through, but I just, this is a question just from me, because I'm super curious. John, what kind of adoption are you really seeing on for the channel, just, from Google, let's say, over the past 3 or 4 months? I'd like to validate what we think we are seeing from the market.
There's something like over 150 million businesses on Maps, and those businesses are discovering that they can use messaging now, and working with our partners to implement it around the world. We've also worked with mobile carriers for RCS business messaging, which is a carrier product that allows rich messaging and the features that you've seen today. And we've seen significant growth in the number of users and businesses having conversations together through these rich business messaging tools. I believe, Richard, is this something that I can mention, the triple-digit growth that you've seen? Yeah, triple-digit growth that you've seen. Maybe you can mention the actual number in terms of the kind of conversations that you're handling through asynchronous messaging.
Yeah, I mean, from our side, it's been I think a crazy number. I think as I said, it's kind of driven by the emergence of channels and I guess sometimes I want to use the word predicament, but yeah, I guess the predicament that the brands find themselves in really needing this meaningful channel in the current time. So yeah, it was 430% we saw in demand for asynchronous messaging channels Q1 to Q2 this year, and that's continued to accelerate this year as well. So, I think it's almost at the point now where we're seeing there isn't a major brand out there who isn't having this conversation at some part of their in some part of their customer life cycle. So yeah, I think it's a telling sign, but yeah, I guess it's great to now see also these features out available to brands in the market as well.
That's amazing.
Cool. Well, looking through inbox here, we're getting some great questions, so please keep them coming in. This looks like a question for John. How are you seeing automation and artificial intelligence play out with the emergence of this channel?
Very, very much as a tool. So a lot of the bots that you see today in the early days, they kind of followed a standard flow, a script like flow, and you could easily come to a dead end, which is where we realized that actually it's super important that live agents are involved in the process. And we've got technologies such as CCAI, which is Cloud Contact Center AI, and we provide a virtual assistant, so it's able to surface information for live agents to actually help them resolve problems faster. So, for instance, if there's order information, how do you present that order information to the agent at the right time in the right way? So we do see AI as being a huge help to this, and I believe that over the coming year we'll see an increase in the levels of ability that bots demonstrate, and also the responsiveness of live agents as a result of the use of AIs, because there'll be much better understanding of the intent, the reasons why users are contacting the businesses. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, I'm sure it does. And I think from our take, it's great to see this now coming to the fore. I think there's been a little bit of a challenge. Well, I'd say, artificial intelligence, especially around natural language processing, has come leaps and bounds over the last years. I think it's really missed the medium to do it correctly. I think a few of us have tried, back in the day, IVR or voice-based bots, which, I think sounded really good, but people really struggled to get their message across. But messaging is perfect for this, right? I think it's much clearer to understand the intent. It's also much clearer, I think, with the functionality of buttons and carousels within that messaging interface to kind of guide a user down a predetermined flow. I think it's very, when we speak with our customers, we're very kind of prescriptive to say is, don't try and solve the entire universe with this bot. Take the 20% of issues that take 80% of the manual tasks of your team, or have 80% of the value to your customer, and solve for that, and build on that gradually. It's not about having a bot that is all knowing and all seeing from day one, because I think that's the part that can really have an adverse impact on that. But definitely for us, the automation piece is the perfect part, because for our customers, a lot of them come to us, hey, great, I need to solve for customer experience, and my customers are demanding that I'm on this channel. But a big part of it as well is that COVID has impacted a lot of companies negatively from a revenue perspective, and they are looking at trying to drive that more efficient way of running their business. And if they can take out some of the really mundane tasks from their team, it's a great way to scale. Okay, cool. Vasu, any comments on AI for you?
Yeah, just that I think what really drives adoption, works for the channel when it comes to AI, is the fact that the AI layer is really invisible on the channel. So it's not a widget, it's not a different avatar that you're going to engage with. It's just a seamless interface that's just making all your conversations so much more intelligent, contextual, and personalized. The amount of work that goes on to make that happen in the back end is huge, but then the delivery of it, as far as the channel is concerned, is just so seamless for the end user that you really start to kind of really even think if there is a differentiated AI layer. So, and I think that works beautifully for the channel. And it's what drives adoption so much, because it is just, for the end user, it is just so much more convenient to have conversations here than on, let's say, logging into a live chat widget, or going to a specific company website to connect with that brand. I think that seamlessness is for me, that's the absolute winning thing when it comes to conversational commerce.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's keep going through. A question from Rude. I think he's asking particularly the best practices for the utility market, and particularly within the sales or acquisition of customers. And I think for me, Rude, this is, I can take the start of this, but I think this is really, as I said, what conversational commerce is now about providing more than just the support. Yes, it's great to be on a channel that your customers demand, but we think that's table stakes now. Customers are going to expect you to be on these channels, and you're going to have a quick response time. You're going to have effective automation for customer service. But it's now about being proactive. How can I really enhance these channels to really drive more business? And a great way of this for me, if you're talking about the utility market, is the ability for people, I've seen a couple of these, is to broadcast a message asking people to check their bills. So you could go through a really cool automation experience, which allows you to upload your bill. You can take the data off that bill, read it. You want to do a comparative use case for it. But Ruth, please feel free to reach out. I know some of our sales engineers would love to have a crack at delivering some value for you there as well. Anything for you, John or Vasu, on the utility market that you've seen or wanted to comment on for Ruth?
Yeah, I think for the utility market, I think I've seen maybe a bit of a spectrum in terms of adoption. So you have the most basic use cases around things like, leveraging the channel for broadcast messages to allow people to know service interruptions or planned maintenance, things like that. But the channel also is super mature when it's combined with some other technologies. I recently had a conversation with a utilities provider in the US that was using the channel to automate their entire invoicing process, which is largely manual today. So they're leveraging the channel to enable customers to go read directly from smart meters and send that out to the invoicing team to create invoices, as opposed to having field services agents go and get physical readings from things like electricity meters. So I think there are some fantastic opportunities, like you said, Richard.
And I agree. And if you think about your own experience, when your utility has a problem, say your power is out, what's the first thing that people do? They call the call center of the utility. And and complain. And so the call centers then become overwhelmed with the spike of activities, and the use of asynchronous messaging would actually provide the utility ability to handle that excess capacity really, really efficiently by sending out messages to their customers saying that they're aware that there's an outage in the area and what they were doing to fix it, and giving them updates. Resulting in a much better satisfaction of the customers. Great opportunity.
Look, I mean, that's a great question, Ruth. So yeah, I mean, there's some great feedback there as well. I think for us, utilities is, it's right for the ability to customer experience. It's one of those things that I think traditionally people, it's the same as a little bit like your traditional telco sectors, where when you need to contact more of these, let's say, traditional enterprises, the idea that you might have to go through a 45-minute experience to complete a very simple task. For me, that's the opportunity to really provide some disruption in an industry as well. So yeah, great. Please get in touch. All right, so they keep coming in. Look, John, clearly very popular on Google Business Messaging. There's a bunch of feature questions. I think one which is quite pertinent is from Anurag. Is there a geographical limitation to conversational commerce, or what you're showing us at Google Business Messages on Google Maps, or is this now rolled out globally?
This is available globally.
Globally, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's really powerful about this. I think if you can imagine the sheer load of what Google might be handling in either Maps or in Google Search. This is available in Google Search as an entry point as well. Think about it from yourself as a user. If you see that messaging button alongside a phone call button, which one would you choose? And I think the stats are pretty unequivocal in saying that companies are going to be expected to be on here very quickly. So yeah, make sure you're registered and ready to go. One here from Alex. What are some of the challenges that we've seen in deploying automation and asynchronous messaging? John, I don't know if you want to take that. Otherwise, you can take it as well.
Yeah, certainly. So there's challenges if your data, for instance, is in silos. Maybe you've got data in a server that's within the contact center, and you've got other data on the sales and marketing side, which is in a different location. That makes it hard for integrators to plug in their various CRM systems and so forth. So it can take time to do that. So I would always recommend that if you move your data to the cloud so that you can utilize APIs that exist for CRMs out there in the world, you'll be able to implement far faster than perhaps you would do if you're still using different types and fragmented IT infrastructure.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think the world is a little bit guilty to a certain degree. Software as a service has changed the world. The ability to have a company build your CRM for you, to build your ERP, to build your finance systems is amazing. But what that has created is these closed ecosystems of silos of companies that, in all honesty, it's not in their interest to kind of open up. Some companies not in their interest to open up that flow of data. So for me, if you're going to launch any type of automation, you need to be very cognizant that it's going to take. I mean, most of our automation sequences will take 6 or 7 different data sources to get right for a very particular user flow. So that's not solving for all problems. But the good thing about that is that what you start to do is once you've built the interconnections with each of these data silos, you start to kind of strike them off a box. And once you get through that whole list, you then have this almost this amazing layer of finally you do have access to all data in your business, and it's on a channel where your customers can readily access it. So it becomes a very powerful thing. So my advice is, I think my feedback on that challenge really is don't underestimate how fragmented your data may be and the challenge of really solving that. Okay, let me keep looking. Vasu, anything on that at all on challenges you've seen from your customers?
Well, that's definitely top of the list, but just from something that's more intrinsic to how businesses tend to solve for it, there is usually such a focus on this being a touch point solution rather than a life cycle solution. And I think what I'm trying to say is that more often than not, we see brands struggle to work with a channel because they're trying to figure out how to blend that channel for or use that channel to solve one particular touch point issue, like the ability to send broadcast messages. I think just a slight shift in mindset to kind of look at the entire customer life cycle and understand every touch point where the channel can be of play just results in better design and drives better adoption with customers. That's supported by the backend data integration. I think that's what makes the channel really impactful.
Awesome, thanks. Conscious of time, we have got a lot of questions, and I think for anyone, I think there's a lot of questions specific to Google Business Messages. Feel free to keep scanning them on this QR code. I'll make sure the team is responding back to you specifically with any of the specific requirements that you have on Google Business Messaging. But to kind of wrap up, I think let's just go have a quick round the room. What would be your number one recommendation for a business that's looking to embark or enhance their journey on conversational commerce? Vasu, what are you thinking?
I'd say pivot to use cases, right? Understand what the channel is solving for. Don't force fit the channel into something that's not going to work for you when you have internal hurdles like siloed data, siloed operations, legacy infrastructure that is not going to be super API friendly. We have to understand that those are things that contribute to how a newer channel works and functions and is effective as well. So I'd say pivot to use cases, build really solid use cases for your customers, not for the channel, and then bring in every channel of support that makes sense. So asynchronous channels have no limitations in terms of whether it's a support only channel or a sales channel. It can be leveraged everywhere. It applies to every single touch point. I'm familiar with brands that are using the channel super effectively for things like loyalty management or for customer retention. So there is absolutely no limit as to where the channel is applicable. What makes a difference is how well you understand the channel and how well you design that flow. So yeah, for me, it's build the right use cases.
Thanks, Vasu. John?
Yeah, am I limited to one? And I'm not allowed +1 on Vasu's answer? Okay, so I've talked about siloed data already. So my other next recommendation would be get a champion. Do you have a chief digital officer or somebody who can really own implementing conversational commerce? If not, get a champion and have that champion talk to folk like MessageBird who can actually deliver and implement this and make it real.
Yeah, and look, I think kind of touching on that as well for me, I think there are a lot of barriers for a business. I think as you start to really kind of scratch the surface of deploying conversational commerce, the barriers that have been put up by legacy systems and, in all honesty, the legacy channels, if you think about how long we've been integrated with SMS, voice, and email, it is a significant shift to move to an instant messaging environment. So it really makes sure that you pick that champion. I think you really need a strong advocate, someone who understands the space, someone who is leaning towards an innovative and more disruptive lean take on the business, but make sure they have the empowerment to actually push it through. For me, it's also about, let's not boil the ocean. It's really about picking the specific user journeys that have maximum value to your customer first, and maximum value to you as well. It's no point solving, looking to build a POC based on something that has very minimal impact on your customers or on your business. So it is about picking that right use case and then building on that, right? You can very easily shift people out of this channel or an asynchronous channel into traditional channels very easily. So solve for these and solve well for these specific use cases. and then start to push people back to traditional channels outside of that ecosystem, but build on it as you go. I think that's my advice as well. So look, thank you very much. We're running on time, guys, as well. I will also let you know from our side is if you would like, as a business, any demo on any of our channels from today on how you as a business can engage with conversational commerce, please use that same QR code. Please just leave a message there saying, we're interested in receiving a demo, and we'll make sure that we get back to you in the next hour or so. So, look, I just really wanted to thank Vasu and John. You guys are very busy people, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time to share your insights with us. Thanks a lot, and we'll speak to you guys all soon. Have a good day.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for the session. It was really interesting. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.